Hi guys. So I thought, seeing as so many of you weren't motivated to do the Bible on a Cheering, that we'd skip it this week. So I'm just going to do this wee little devotional for you guys. Any of the past Bible on a Cheerings that I've sent you, feel free to do them and send them back to me. Please put the date that you got it so that I know which one I'm working with. That would be great. I'm going to try not to stare downward at my... This is all new to me, so if the recording is a bit weird, I apologise. I hope that next week we'll be back together and I won't have to do all this rubbish. That would be great. So, with all this talk of COVID-19, I did wonder if perhaps you guys were thinking, how does COVID-19 fit into this whole God is perfect and God's world is perfect kind of plan? So I thought I would just address that question today, and maybe we could... If you have any questions, please feel free to send me a message. So if you look around, like when God finished his work, he said it was very good. And when you look around the world today, you think, well, it's not very good, is it? And we might be given for wondering, how does all this doom, destruction, tornadoes, earthquakes, whatever, work into God's perfect world? Well, the answer to that question is found in chapter 3 of Genesis, when Adam and Eve ate the fruit and decided for themselves, really, that they would be like God, which means that they would take charge of what was right and what was wrong. And by doing that, they kind of cut God out of a lot of control over the earth. But also what they did is they caused curse on themselves, curse on the earth, and that curse continues to resonate right throughout history. So when we look at viruses, we tend to think of viruses, because COVID-19 is a virus, we tend to think of viruses as the bad guys in the story. But actually, believe it or not, inside your body, right this instant, you have hundreds of viruses, and they're not doing anything harmful to you. They're actually in there to modify how much bacteria you have in your system, because you have lots of that too. And if the viruses weren't there, the bacteria would go crazy and you would have a bit of an issue. So viruses, by and large, are in the world because they modify bacterial infection. And so they're not the bad guys. Basically, a virus is like a little machine. It's not actually a living creature as we consider living creatures. It doesn't eat, it doesn't breathe, it doesn't reproduce. What it does is copy itself over and over and over again, like a little cloning machine. And so what that means is, eventually, they burn themselves out. Because if you've ever tried to copy a copy of a copy, there are only so many copies of a copy of a copy that you can do before you lose the information, and that's basically what happens to a virus. The more that it copies or replicates itself, the more information is lost. Every time that it copies itself, a little bit of information is lost from its RNA and its DNA, and so it slowly burns itself out. So what we have with COVID-19 is a virus that has got so many mutations that it's actually become harmful to humanity. Now, where is God in all of that? Well, same place he's always been, really. God has always been at the same place. He's in heaven, where he's always been. He's never really moved. And he is still very much in charge. He's in charge. But just because he's in charge doesn't mean he controls everything that goes on. He is in control, but not controlling. And so when you're looking at things like COVID-19, it's not like God has gone, oh, we're going to curse the entire earth with COVID-19. That's not how God works. What you're seeing is a result of the fall in Genesis. And the further away we get from that perfect world that God created in Genesis, the worse things get, because the corruption, the mutations overwhelmingly become greater and greater and greater the further away from the perfection that God created initially in the garden. And so what we see, what COVID-19 is then, is really just a reflection of the fact that we live in a fallen world. We live in a world that has been damaged over time by the choices that Adam and Eve made, by the choices that human beings continue to make. They continue to make choices that cut God out of things. Hopefully you guys as Christians will bring God back into things through prayer, through Bible study. That's how we bring God back into our lives personally. And when we bring him into our lives, we ultimately change everything around us. And that is hopefully for the better. So COVID-19 is not some evil little demon running around. I actually think that we will come out of COVID-19 much, much better and much quicker than any of the other pandemics that have hit the world in the past, because our medicines are so much more advanced, our information sharing is so much more advanced, we are in much healthier environments, we have better water supply, we have better food. All of these things mean that the kind of level of devastation that happened with, say, the Spanish flu or the bubonic plague just will not happen. So we will come out of this. The virus will burn itself out like viruses do. It will probably mutate and change and become something else. But realistically, guys, hope is not in whether or not we survive a pandemic. Hope is in the fact that as Christians, you guys have given your lives over to the Lord. You already are saved. So your future is assured. And we need to concern ourselves more with our eternity than our mortal bodies, which personally find is decaying by the second these days. So never mind COVID-19. You guys have a great time having extra time with your parents. I'm sure that for all of you it's been a bit weird not going to school or not having full homeschool access earlier to the library and everything else. But you know what? God is still in charge and you guys can get through this. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you in person, hopefully next weekend, and getting back into lessons. Meanwhile, kia kaha, stay strong and enjoy the Lord. See yous.